Hi guys, welcome to the next tutorial which we're going to be doing a study on my cat who is a snowshoe, and the older she's got the darker her face has got. So this one's actually quite a dark colour on the front, which is really great because it helps when we come in to do the colour of the eyes. It really helps those eyes pop. Now I've provided the line art for you this time purely because it's probably easier for me to show you, the simpler line detail that we need to get down, because we really don't need masses of information. It's just getting the basics down. All I'm doing is just dabbing off any major excess graphite, and then that way we reduce how muddy our image gets. Now it's really cold in the den today, so I have blanket and scarf and I'm right next to the window, so should you hear the start of a hum, then it quite possibly is because I've had to put my fan heater on, because if you're doing this later on in the year, it's January and it's really cold. So there's some nice faint lines there now. Now, as before, as we're going through it, I will work out roughly what colours we need. I have a fair idea of the ones that I have picked out so far, but you know me, I like to chop and change. I'm probably picking out an awful lot more than what I actually end up using, but I can work out which ones we're going to use. So we're going to work on the eye first. So the first thing we're going to do is gently with Paynes Grey. I write these down as I go. Gently with the Paynes Grey, we're just going to block in where the pupil is. And I'm only doing this very lightly, because each time we go in and layer, we can darken it as we go along. I'm not going to bother doing that eye, we're just going to stick with this one. I'm just going to sharpen it quickly as it's a bit blunt. And then we're also going to do darker edging of the eyes. And this just helps us get it a little bit in context when we come to do the blue. Now you can see she's got almost like a vein line, and I am gonna flipped off in the wrong direction there. I am going to draw these in now. And she's got a dark bit there. I need to zoom in on my reference a little bit. The picture isn't particularly clear because it's taken quite a distance away, but this is what I like about this one, because we want to make it as clear as possible when we do it, so that's our aim. So I'm just drawing these in. And then gently just drawing round. So eventually we'll go over with the blue, that's why I'm not going very heavy. So we've got a blue, but it's not a turquoise blue, so I'm thinking phthalo. Let's give it a sharpen. All of a sudden, the lighting has completely dropped. Bear with me. There we go. I thought I could get away with having the lamp off, but clearly not. Okay, so we're just going to build up very lightly where the darkest areas are around the eye. And this is the Phthalo Blue. Now we can go dark up here. We've got a light area. We need to come up a bit more here. Again, we'll build up patches as we go. We're almost doing it from the opposite, which I think you can get away with a little bit with eyes. Because we're then going to go in with the lightest and we can blend it all with our mid-tones. She very much has, I don't know how well you'll see it on your screen, but a darker zone here. She's got a little patch there, she's got one there, and she's got one there. So we're just going to put them in now. So I think now, and I have a feeling I haven't got my lightest with me. Okay, so because I don't have all of my poly blues out, which I suppose it would probably be easier, I'm going to be really lazy and I'm using Blueish Pale from the Pablo. In fact, no, let's make it easier for you guys. I know that most of you have both ranges in the pencils, but let's just make it easier. And let's see if we can find. I have so many in here I haven't even touched yet. Lots of beautiful purples. Okay, let's go with sky blue. Okay, so that's a shame because I'm going to show you very quickly. This is the reason why I personally prefer to have the two brands, because this is one of the lightest in the Pablos range. And it's called Blueish Pale, and this is the lightest I have in my entire Pablo range, so that's a big difference. So I still think, although we can blend it with the white, I'd still be tempted for me to use the Blueish Pale. So if you have Pablos, then I want you to fill the whole eye area with the Blueish Pale. If you don't have the Pablos, I want you to gently go in with the sky blue and then very gently afterwards go over with either white in your luminance or white in your poly and just lighten it up a bit more. But as long as you don't go heavy, you should get quite a nice light pale. And we have a white zone here. I'm going to line that out with my and there's actually a slightly different tone of blue in there. I'll tackle that in a moment. So you get a good layer down. Of your lightest. And then we're going to go back to the phthalo. No, actually, let's not. Let's go in with light phthalo. Now, you would have used these on the turtle when we did under his belly. So the light phthalo is going to do our mid-tones. And we've got some mid-tones coming all the way out to where the line work was here. Now, if you notice, I'm coming out in the direction that the eye. So rather than going around in lots of circles, which I've done in here, as I come out, I'll change my pattern to up and down strokes gently, but going out towards the shape of the eye. So because there aren't many lines that you can see in with this darkest area, and when we blend out, we can just start bringing the odd line that you can see in as well. So we're technically on our first layer. We're probably looking about 4 or 5, I think. We're just going to blend these to make these a bit softer. Which is quite light down here, so I don't want to put any mid-tone in here. We've got a tiny bit of mid-tone in there, and we've got a few, not many, coming in from that way. We're going to just build up that mid-tone. And there we go. Now as we build up the tones, we've got a section here which is really light. So if you find that you're not seeing it very light, it means you haven't gone quite dark enough. Unless you've gone a bit heavy with the blue, that would be the only other reason. But so the mid-tone meets up with these blue specks that she has in her eyes. At the moment they look really solid and heavy. But what we're going to do now is we're going to go in with our phthalo, not light, the normal phthalo, and we're going to start building up layer 2. Very gently out towards the direction now you can see we've got some eyelash shadows, so I'm going to draw them in. Make sure you've got a nice sharp point at this stage, and then we can build up that shadow that appears up here. Just nice and dark in the corner. And then we can darken some of these lines. Remember they were a bit bluer. So we just need to dull the grey down, which is what we put on top to begin with. At the moment our pressures are fairly light. We don't want to be too heavy because we want to build up the pressure the further up the layers we go. So all I'm doing is adding the dark blue again onto layer 2. Got the odd bit. We don't have to be exactly like the photo here, we're allowed to be a little bit artistic. Just really observe where your lights, your darks and your mid-tones. So we can go in with our light phthalo and we can now fill in the sky, avoiding this white area here. Now that white patch is quite difficult to see, which means we still need to build up. So we're going in again with the light phthalo and we're just going to build up the mid-tone now. A little bit of extra pressure compared to your last layer. You can blend over your darks as well, because that blending over the dark is what helps give you the seamless transition, the ombre between your dark and your medium. What you don't want is, not on this particular reference, there are some references that need it, but you don't want that stop-start that you sometimes get when you don't get the blending quite right between your mids and your darks. So remember, I said that this needs to stay very light here. And then we can go in with our lightest, which for me is the Pablo Blueish Blue, Blueish Pale, sorry. And then we're going to blend over all the layers. Now you are going to smudge some dark into light and light into dark and medium, and you are basically blending all of the colours together. So you do lose some of that real light effect that you have, but we're going to layer again, so don't panic. We're going to go in. I'm going to blend that with. Let's blend that with the white, if I can find my white, which of course is not going to be as easy as I was hoping. Now, I have done, or have on the go, about 4 different portraits at the moment, which means that my pencils are in 5 different places around my office. And I don't have 5 whites on the go. So for you, use your poly white. I'm just using the Pablo because I happen to have it here. So all I'm doing now is going in where the light areas are. I'm just touching up the colours slightly to get them a bit paler. There we go. And then I can go in and blend the sky area. If possible, try and use, I tend to use ovals, which I find easier, and once you've done this over and over again it becomes muscle memory, so it does get easier. Okay, so we're going to go back in with the phthalo, and I need to make this a little bit more brighter, and of course we can't make it any brighter than it is because it's white, so we know that we need to go darker around the edge. We need to go darker up here anyway. Now at some point we're going to be going in with the blue, the grey, apologies, and what that does is it gives us a more realistic look, because even in the bluest eyes you'll see patches of grey. Now a little bit more pressure as we're near the pupil, and we're on to layer 3, so we can apply a touch more pressure just to get some of that dark pushed into the tooth a bit more. Lighten the pressure as you come out into your medium section. There we go. Now at this stage, this is where I'm going to cross over and bring in, it's I think a warm grey, and warm grey 3, And the reason we bring in the warm greys, even though they're blue, if you look very closely, there are patches of almost lilac actually. You could get away with adding a bit of lilac if you want to. But for me, I'm not too worried at the moment. So I'm just going to, not too hard, just run over our mids and our darks. We don't want to really run into our lights at the moment with this warm grey. It's probably quite difficult to see through the camera, but it will lift and it will almost make the lighter section of the blue richer. And again, we'll probably go in with a bit of a darker grey as we build up. I do tend to spend time at this stage building up the levels as much as I can, because I'd rather do it gradually and go in with the lights and work my way up than go in too dark too quickly. Okay, so I'm going to grab my black and I'm going to deepen the pupil now. I think we're at a good point where we can get that nice and dark. And then we can see how much darker we can go. And we can actually go quite dark. So this is where we want to get, wherever I put it, our Paynes Grey. And we're going to push out, tiny circular motions, push out that black into the blue. And then we're blending between the two with the Paynes, which gives us a smooth transition, takes away that harsh black line, and it darkens and softens into the darker of the blue areas, which is exactly what we want. So you can see just how soft that's helped make that. It really has helped. And I might even just every now and then, just the odd patch. Looks like hardly anything through the camera, but when you're doing it yourself, you'll be able to see the difference it's making. So we're going to go in and darken this area up here. Let's darken these shadows of the hair. Now I'd much rather you spent 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours getting these eyes right, because they tell a story and they say an awful lot. I'm just going in with the phthalo to just change the shape here slightly. So in my opinion, getting the eyes right can make a massive difference to the final outcome of your portrait. And actually, if you get eyes wrong and they sit wrong, it really can affect your portrait quite massively. It can change the proportions. So I'm just going in with the phthalo again. I'm building up. Her eyes are looking really beautiful and soft. I'm going to go in with the light phthalo and I'm going to put some more in here, because at the moment our highlight is too light. And can you see now how much brighter this highlight here is? Much, much brighter, which is what we want. I'm going to blend it out using my lightest blue. You blend it out using your white, unless you have this pencil, of course. Now we're going to go with the Paynes and just bring this shadow up a bit more. Just going to keep going with that blending. Some nice 3D happening here, and that's my phone ringing. Right, apologies, I have put the heating on. I'll try and turn it off in a minute, as I'm aware how irritating it's probably going to get after a while. Now what I want to do is start adding a little bit more texture and detail. Now although the eyes already look really, really lovely, as soft as they are, I just want to add a little bit more detail in there. So I'm going in with the Cold Grey 4. And the reason being is I don't want to add too much more warmth in there. And I'm just going to use the 4 just to add some patches of grey here and there. You don't have to be precise. I just want to get a little bit of texture, add a bit of interest. I say the reference photo isn't particularly clear on this occasion, so we can just be a little playful with where we put these extra bits of detail, but we just want some texture in there. And we're going to do the same. There we go. Already we're looking a bit better, and you can get to sweep over little patches here and there, very lightly though. You don't want any pressure behind the pencil. Just want to be going in lightly. I'm going to grey tone some of this down here. And then we're going to go in again with our phthalo. We're going to build up a bit of pressure now, and we want a little bit more pressure on the pencil. Now because we've got a nice amount of layers down, once we start coming into our lightest areas, just lighten your pressure slightly. And that then means that we still get a bit of the toning underneath. While still adding some nice detail. So again, just little notches, I suppose, for lack of a better word. Just tucking them in. Just going to blend the dark area out here a bit more. We're really starting to get some texture in those eyes now. We can afford very slightly here, just to go a touch bit darker, but not much. Now we have got some blue that comes into the white of an eye. As we all know, they're never actually technically white. I'm just going to bring out my grey again, my cold grey. Just want to tone this down a little bit in here. Bring this down a bit darker. Blend a little bit more. I'm going to go over the lines just to take a little bit of that blue out It's a little bit too blue for my liking. And then again up to the edges there. Now I am tempted, I want to go a little bit darker, just on the inner areas here. There we go, a bit of punch. And then up here. Nice, okay. I'm going to get my Paynes Grey and just put, you're barely going to see it, but it makes such a difference. We're just going to put in a couple of those tiny little dotty patchy areas that we did in other areas of the eye. Strengthen that shadow. And I do think that that's the main part of that eye done. So I'm really happy with that. So we can now come in, I think, with the light phthalo. Light phthalo will be fine. And we're just going to get a base colour down here. Don't go too heavy with the pressure. You'll see the line work stops here, because that's when we then start going into, there's like a very slight brownish tinge in there. So I am quite tempted to, let's go in with the Nougat. I'm going to fill that space with the Nougat. And then I'm lightly going to blend out over the blue. And then I'm going to bring my blue and go over the whole thing. I'm going to go in with my standard phthalo. We've got a dark little area in here, dark area here, but we've also got some of that tinge, so I'm going to go in with the Nougat like so, and then I'm going to grab my lightest of the blue, and yours would be the lightest of yours. So mine would be bluish pale, yours would be what did I say it was? Sky blue. I'm just going to blend, because it's the skin, the muscle, the eyeball itself, so it's got to be fairly smooth. And then we can just bring in that shadow there, and a bit more under here. We need that rounded effect, and the only way you're going to get a rounded effect is by having the contrast. I'm just going to draw the shadow in that I see there with the blue, but we're actually going to go in with the Paynes Grey. So I'm going in with the Nougat just to blend out a little bit more into the blue zone. Get the lightest of bluish pale, blend the edges, and then I am going to go in with Cold Grey 4. Actually, let's go with Cold Grey 4 first. Add that shadow in. There we go. And then, because I like to make sure I go in with everything I can, I'm going to go in with Paynes Grey and just get that in a bit darker, and in the very edge here it's quite light, so I'm just going to go in my lightest to the blue, bluish pale, and then just help pick out that, and then I'm just going to soften it with the Paynes Grey. And when I mean soften, I mean I go really lightly with pressure pencil pressure. You don't need a lot. Okay, so I'm going to line in here, because that's where we are the heaviest. And get the edging of that eye down. I'm going to get my phthalo and I'm just going to strengthen the blue on the edge of that eye. And there we go. Okay, so we're going to get our cold grey 4 and we're just going to blend in here, because we then, where the eyelid sits, it goes light then dark then light again. So we're going to mark in where it goes light again. Quite light in here, so I'm just going to bring that down. Now don't blow. I have bad habits. Never blow on your portraits. Always use a brush or a blower, which I have actually got. I just haven't gone around to taking it out of my bag yet. Now we have a really slim eyebrow here, so let's put that in now. So hopefully, if you're new to my Patreon channel, you may not have it already. You can just get a bit of paper and fold it maybe 4 times. This is just a bit of kitchen lino. I'm just going to turn the heater off. A bit of kitchen lino. When you do indentation, you need to do it into something soft. If you indent it into something hard, then you don't get the indent depth that you need to get for your pencil to then skip over it, rather than the pencil just dipping down into it. Now I thought I had there we go, my smallest one. So again, if you're new to my Patreon channel, these are dotting tools. You get them in a set of 4, so you get 8 sizes in total, because each end has a different size. Now for the little one that just curls over, I have missed the bit that goes over the eye, but actually you can barely see it, so I'm not too fussed. So pop your card, paper, whichever you've chosen to go underneath, and find the smallest end you have. If you don't have a ball tool, get a mechanical pencil and push the pencil all the way in, and just use the edge of your mechanical pencil. Don't use anything sharp, because you will cut your paper, and that's not the purpose. We're here to indent the paper. So looking at that one, we sort of curl like that. Now while I'm here, I'm going to put in the rest, because we've got a few up here. Now I'm going to use the slightly larger end first. So I'm going to go in with the larger end first, because we're closer to the face, the detail in the whiskers are larger. And then we've got one big sweeping one here. Then I'm going to go in with the smaller one, because I don't want to make the indentation larger, but I do want to make it deeper. So we're then going to go in like so. And that is pretty much it for the indentating. Indentating or indenting? I'm making words up now. Okay, so I don't need any of the blues in my hand, so I'm going to remove them. I didn't have to use any of those, so they can go away. And the reason being is I end up confusing myself, which is not hard nowadays. And we are going to start building up the blacks. Now, in the middle section of her face, she's actually a cold black, and under here is quite a cold black. So any underlaying we will do with Paynes Grey and the cold grey 4. When we come to do the warmer areas, we're going to start using a warmer underlayer. And the colour, if I can think off the top of my head, which apparently seems to elude me. Nope. I have completely lost my pencil, so I'll have to find that in a minute. But it'll be colours like the Nougat that we'll have underneath, which will help just make them really, really dark. But at the moment, we don't need to concentrate on the warms. I'll deal with that when we get to it. So at the moment, we're concentrating on our colds. So underneath the eye here, we're just going to get in where our darker areas are. And we're just going to get the basic shadows in. You can probably hear and see that I'm not applying too much pressure. And you can see nicely how easy my pencil glides over that indentation. Now if you're not happy with how visible it is, it's not a problem, we can deal with that later. I'm not too bothered about mine, but you can easily just come up a little bit closer to the edges and make it that little bit finer. At the moment it looks very stark and out of place because we're just doing our basics, but the more and more we layer over the top, you can just push a little bit harder and you can push the grey very slightly into that indentation and it just softens it. And once you've got the whole layers done, it looks much more natural. So don't panic right now if you're thinking, oh my god, what have I done? So just bring your Paynes Grey and just do the odd piece of fur that comes over the eye. Now you're not going to get these strong straight pieces of fur, which is not what we want, so it's perfect because the wax that's already laid down will soften the edges of your pencil as we go over it. So that's what we want. We don't want these really hard lines. So we're just going to fill an area, and there's a lot of area at the nose side which is solid colour, and that's part of the reason actually why I chose this one, because I want to show to you that to get realism you don't have to show every single piece of fur that you see, you don't have to draw every single hair that you see. There's actually an awful lot you can omit from a portrait and still give it a level of realism. Our eyes are very clever at filling in information, so we're almost giving ourselves a bit of an illusion, and that's what you want to do. So when we come to this bit here, you're going to see me preempted in a minute. We're just going to do little strokes of fur coming from the eye and a slight curve. We're not talking straight. Too many people draw straight fur lines, and that's just not how they are. There's a slight curve to them. Yes, there are straight ones, I'm not saying there are not, but when you're looking at it this close, you can pretty much see that although they have a direction, they don't have to be standing straight like soldiers. We haven't actually got much in the way of info down here, so we're just going to start building up. Now we've got a bit lighter there, so I think I'm just going to grab my grey 3 and just going to blend over the top like so, and then we're going to work on the darker area in a moment. Okay, we're going to work on getting the colour down in this area. Please excuse my nail polish, I haven't got around to sorting it out since the last bit of recording. It's up to you, but if you want to, you can tape across to keep your edges clean. What I'm probably going to do is just go over the edge and then I'll take it to my paper trimmer later on, purely just because it saves time really. Now this is probably going to sound like an odd, might hear some tapping. I'm afraid I've got loads of water dripping off my office roof. So light flesh, and all we're going to do is add tone underneath. So that's all we're going to be doing with the light flesh. So we can see from our reference that we've got a bit that starts down here. I'm just going to lighten some of that. Just to stop me dragging in too much on my pencil. So she's pretty light as we come down here. So rather than trying to add in highlights later, which we will do, but we need to build up layers first, we're going to get these first few layers down so we can then build on top. So this is giving us the tone that we need. Now she's got a bit of a yellowy pale tinge to her, but if I put yellow straight down, we're not going to get the colour that we need. It's going to sort of get a little bit lost. I just need to move my light. There we go. Okay. I'm not too worried about how neat I am, but I am being very close, as you can probably see, with my movement. So there's no big gaps in between each pencil stroke, so you can't really see. It looks filled nicely rather than it being very gappy, if that makes sense. Now, somehow my dark sepia has magically disappeared. So I'm going to grab another one, because that is what we're going to need to underlayer the warmer parts of the coat. So dark sepia is going to play a big part in this bit. So I'm just going to put another coat on top. It may look dark, but by the time you've gone over with your darker colours, your low lights, then so you can see how smooth that layer is. I've gone out a little bit further down here than I needed to, but that's not a problem. Okay, so we've got those two down, so we know we're not going to make the mistake of going over those. So I'm now going to get my dark sepia, which needs a sharpen. In fact, I might not sharpen it. I might keep it blunt. Now, as much as I go on about sharp pencils, keeping it blunt is actually quite good for doing filler areas and blending, burnishing. So I'm now going to fill the entire area that needs to be dark with dark sepia. But again, look how smooth and how close and how tight my pencil movement is. And again, this becomes muscle memory. The more you do it, the more you practice. Even if you sat in front of a telly, just put a pencil in your hand and just a sheet of paper and just practice getting these tight, clean, even strokes. And again, it may not look like it. It might look like I'm going backwards and forwards, but I'm actually doing very shallow oval movements. Now I'm going to go all the way up to the nose joint here. In fact, it gets darker here, so swap now to your dark indigo. And I only want a light layer on at the moment. So if your pencil is sharp, tilt it slightly, so you're using this section rather than the point. And then that way you haven't got to blunt a nice sharp pencil, you just got to tilt. Try not to tilt too far because the paper can pick up the colour from the barrel. So this is how I've got hold of mine. And then just nice tight movements. So this is how you would transition from warm fur to cold fur. So dark sepia for the warm, dark indigo for the cold, and we're cold up this end. And then we go back into warm. I don't normally block out this much in one go, so let's just do this bottom section. Excuse me. Now we need to keep this bit fairly lightish, so we're now just going to pop on another layer, a gentle layer of dark sepia. And I've gone in, my strokes have been in the same direction that the fur is going. So it makes your job easier when it comes to doing these odd bits of details over the top, because you haven't got to fight against the grain. You haven't got to fight against brush strokes going in the opposite direction. So this is why when you do the sweeping motions, we do it in the direction of the fur See, now we can match the two a little bit because we've got our bases down. See, even now going over with the dark sepia, because my base is that blue, it's colder than the base of the dark sepia. And then when I come over with my dark indigo, your fur stays warm because your base is your dark sepia. So it's a really good way of getting that contrast between your cold and your warm fur. So I'm going to sharpen my dark sepia now, and if you noticed, I've not actually done any blending yet, and at the moment, at this stage, I have no intention to. So what I'm going to do is we need to build into here quite softly. The progression is as I say, quite soft, so that's what we want to do. Now, I'm pretty sure off the top of my head there is no alternative for this in the polys, but the one I'm using is Brownish beige, which I think the probably closest one you're going to end up getting to is the medium of the warm greys. So feel free to use that one if you need to. We don't have to be exact, as I say, no one's going to be sitting there unless you put it up and putting reference side by side, so please don't panic. So all we're going to do is, where we've got this nice layer here, is very gently, I've got hardly any pressure at all, and we're going to go from the edge into the dark, and I'm increasing my strokes as the space gets larger, because again we're undercoating. This isn't the time when we sit and we get all those really fine details in, because doing all this helps get those details in later on. What we're doing is we're warming up the tone of this fur even more. We're just darkening it, giving it some shadow, giving it some depth, making it easier for when we come over with our dark sepia. Okay, so your dark sepia, as you noticed, I worked from outside in. This time we're going to work from the inside out because we want the motion of it moving into the fur. So that's how we're going to do it. So we're going to start off here, and we're going to just spend a little bit of time blending. I'm not being precise because I want uneven strokes. Uneven strokes gives you much more natural looking fur. So I'm doing the opposite of what I've said. So I'm just going to keep going, and then I'm going to go in the other direction. Oh, is that having a clocking here without tapping? Okay, so you can see this much more natural transition into the fur, and we can work out from there how much darker we need to be in the lightest area. So we're just going to keep going, refining the shape as we go, because that's all we're drawing is the shape. So we're trying to get this shape in here correct. So I know that I can come over a bit more. Like I said earlier, I know that I'd come over too far with the pinky colour here. Okay, so we're going to come back in with our brownish beige or your warm grey, and we're now going to blend over the top. You can keep the strokes a little bit shorter this time because we want to get those fine hairs starting to appear, so just keep it a little bit shorter. Keep going till we get to the edge, and doing this we're leaving negative space in between each of our fur strokes, which means we don't have to add highlights. They're already beginning to appear, they're already beginning to transition, so we're taking a lot of work out of what we're having to do. So we now want to start going in and getting some really finer details in, so just very short strokes. It's going to match because we haven't darkened this yet. Once we darken this, then it all sort of starts to slowly bring itself together. Now we want to get a bit of colour variation in here, so once you're happy with the amount of dark sepia you've got down, alter your pressure slightly on some pieces as well, and it just gives you a little touch darker on there, as you can see here. So I'm now going to go in with my Paynes Grey, and I'm just going to nice sharp tip and then we're just going to add in some Paynes Grey, and I'm starting where the dark ends to meet the finish, to meet the light, sorry. So what I'm going to do now is start refining this dark area. Now we're far from finished, so don't panic, but you can get away now with just doing very quick in the same direction again, but they don't have to be precise. So what we're doing now is we're building up those individual first strokes. It doesn't matter whether you go towards or away, it really doesn't matter. You just got to keep going, filling that space. Now I'm using slightly different paper on this, and that is purely because I picked it up by accident. And I'm using Strathmore mixed media, which has given me a little bit more texture than normally I would like. You're probably using your favourites. So we're just going to keep going. You see, I'm not paying any attention really to how neat I'm being. All I'm trying to do is get a difference in pressure, which gives me a difference in degrees of shadow, and we just keep going. If your hand starts to ache a little bit, have a break. Now we can already see this lovely mixture of colour that we're getting in there, which gives us all those different tonal values within the fur, which is what we're after. Now again, we are still only, believe it or not, working on our base layers. Now because we want to start mixing these in as we blend, we're going to start, and you can see the curve in the fur, so make sure when you're getting those strokes in that you include the curve of that fur. When you do it at this speed, you take some of the pressure off. I think we can be a little bit too over the top with how anal we want to be with how precise our first strokes are. We need to take that away, we need to break that down, and we need to have a bit of looseness in there. You know, fur goes in lots of different directions. Yes, it generally moves in the same, but it's very rarely as I said earlier, you know, they're all stood in soldier form. It's just not likely. So we're going to bring the dark indigo back in now, and we're just going to start again, pressure in the same direction, and we're going to go all over the main section here. We don't really want to go up here at the moment. Normally I would start up here, but I'm being different today. Okay, so now we've done that, there is a patch here that is a fairly solid colour, so I'm going to very lightly block that in. Now even though I'm blocking it in, you can still see underneath some of the strokes of fur. Just using fur movements just to blend it out a little bit. We've still got to go a lot darker yet. We've got to come right up here and darken under here. So I'm going to go in and do that now. It's quite a solid patch of colour there, so we're just going to add that in. Okay, now I'm going to go in with the shall I go in with? Yeah, let's go in with the dark sepia, and we're going to solid now. We're going to solidly go over everything we've done. So we're almost colouring in over everything we've done. When it comes to the blue area down here, we swap to our dark indigo. So we can swap to our dark indigo. Again, we're solidifying the colours, but we can still see that detail underneath. Now I'm just going to come along here because there's a slight variation between where it changes from warm to cold before we go in that lightest area of fair. So I'm just bringing the blue up slightly. Like so. Okay, so here we can still afford to bring the colour down a tone or two. So I think we're going to grab our, our walnut. Let me grab. I've had a bit of a tidy up since I was last recording. Not walnut, nougat, sorry. Okay. And again, we're just going to very gently, with our pencils, I'm going to come over slightly so I can trim mine on the paper trimmer. And we're just going to very gently colour over the whole lot. There we go. Okay, now we're going to go in with our dark sepia. And we're just gonna, it's quite patchy, so I've got, I don't know whether you can see that very well, I've got like a wedge on the end, and I'm using the flat part of that wedge just to put in some very tiny dots, I suppose, or oblongs, just to give you a bit of texture there. Where you look at the reference, there's a bit of texture between the colours where they meet. You want to make that blend quite seamless, so that's what we want to do. We just want to add these little variations in. So the next layer we're going to be doing is we're really going to start adding pressure on our pencils now. Okay. We want to start getting some more of the sweep action in. So I'm going to do this with the dark indigo, and we're just going to get some more of the sweeping. And you want to apply a bit more pressure than you have been previously. And we're going to keep going till we come all the way up. So, and then let's bring it in here as well. And there we go. And now what we're going to do is we're going to start observing where we have shadow patches, and we're going to add those shadow patches in again where we started here, didn't we? There's a little bit more pressure this time just to get the wax off of your pencil. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start filling in and coming up to the eye now. I've got the same technique as we do when we do the base. I'm not worrying about doing individual first strokes at this stage. And I apologise, I haven't got the dark indigo, I've got the Paynes Grey. Picked up the wrong one, so I'll go in a minute with the dark indigo again. We've got, where the eye comes down, we've got like a sweeping motion here, and this is where the darkest area of the nose will catch. So we've just got to, again, pick up where those shadows fall. Okay, right, dark indigo this time. We just want to strengthen, in fact I might sharpen the tip. We're just going to strengthen the individual strokes that we can see on this bit of eye. Like so. Now normally when we get this effect we have a very dark patch underneath it, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to fill in that patch underneath. We've had every weather under the sun lately. My garden is covered in snow and now it's raining, so we can afford to make these a little bit finer in here. Like so, there we go. And then we just want to refine that shape. Okay, so we're getting a tiny bit too cold there, so I'm just going to blend that out a bit with the dark sepia, and that should help. Warm that up a touch. There we go. That's looking lovely now. See how full that fur is looking as well. Again, just light layers. Let's bulk out where that shadow hit, which was there. Long strokes. Now we've got a bit of shadow here where the shape slightly changes shape. Base, I don't even know what I said there. Base slightly changes shape, I think. Okay, and then we're going to just bulk up that shadow here, and then let's just add a bit more detail in here. There we go, there we go. Got a bit of warmth in here, so we're just going to colour that in as a flat. We're going to keep this as it is for a natural highlight. And that is almost, I'm just going to very gently blend over the whole lot here with a dusting of dark sepia. There we go. Okay. Hopefully you're all happy with where you are so far. I'm certainly happy, I think. Okay, so I'm going to tilt the picture slightly. I find it easier to work at an angle sometimes. So you do the same. Easily find if it works better for you. Lost my blue tack. Okay, let's just move it in view would help, wouldn't it? so we're going to work on this bit here, and I've moved it because I don't want to keep putting my hands over. So brownish grey, or your warmest grey that you have, and there's a little bit of movement in here, so I'm just going to move my hands each time with each part, and then it gives us a slight bit of texture. Now this area we're doing is the class as the cat's second eye. There was a I don't know whether it's right or wrong, but I read up somewhere that to a bird of prey, or you know, out in the wild or something like that, to a predator, especially the small cats, that this particular section of their head is lighter, because when they're sleeping it looks like their eyes are open, because this effectively looks like a pair of eyes, apparently. I am going to sweep over, I think, actually, with this colour as well. You can do it with your warm grey. Blue tack's in the wrong place. There we go. Okay, and we are quite warm up here, so we're going to work primarily with the dark sepia. So that was the dark sepia I'm just filling, and then I'm going with the warm grey, yours would be, or the brownish beige if you have got the Pablos. In fact, let's just, it's about here it stops, I'm just going to fill that area. Okay, so it's weird because I haven't tilted my reference, so it's looking a bit odd. What we want to do is we just want to get in the direction, we do want to start getting fur in there. I can't work on it like that, no, without changing my reference. Let's go back to doing it that way. Sorry guys. Okay, so there's a whisker here, and that's what we're working up to. So you use these sorts of things as your reference points, so you know that that's what you're working up towards, and the shape then arches down like so, and we get very dark in here. So we're just going to cheat a little bit and go in with the dark sepia now, just to get those, because what we're having to do is leave ourselves negative space now. It'll be much easier than trying to do it later. And pretty much in here is all solid. Now I'm not keen on how strong this has become, so I'm just going to put some dark sepia down into it so you can still see it, but once we start building up layers around it, it won't be as strong. You'll see as we build those layers up that it won't be as in your face. Okay, bear with me one moment. There we go. You can see now as we build up, it's going to make our life a bit easier. So we just need to extend this solid area up a bit. A very strange angle down my pencil there, aren't you? That's quite cool. Okay, and then we can just essentially start solidifying the colours, and we're going to be using probably the mix of the Paynes Grey and the Nougat, because I don't particularly at this stage want it to be too cold up here. If I want to add a slight bit of coldness to it, then I will come over later on, but at the moment, so again we're just getting in the dark patch of the shadow, which is there, and then it comes up and around, and again I am doing jaggedy lines now, but at the moment that is what helps towards our fur texture. It's just those base layers, you don't really want too much. I'm going up and down, but I'm curving my stroke as we do it. So that's pretty much, I'm just trying to get the shape of the solid in there so I can then work on the refinement a bit more. Got a little bit in there. Okay, so your warm grey or your brownish beige, depending on what you have in your kit. I'm just going to blend over the whole lot. Like so. Dark sepia. Again, if you're going to do this up and down line, you need to do in the direction of the fur, because it takes a load of headache out for you. Right, remember I'm trimming mine, so I'm not bothered about this edge being a mess at the moment. So we've gone in with our solid lines. Now we're just going to again get some refinement in there around the top. You see how simple going over in this method and how quick you can render up fur without it looking flat. It renders up very quickly, and it has a real lovely depth to it. So we're going to go in the Paynes Grey. Dark sepia. Again, different directions. My lead is slightly softer this time because we don't want really strong, sharp. Okay, I think we're going to blend over this top part with the Nougat and just a very gentle coating. don't come down to this bit because it's slightly whiter. Okay, I'm going in with the Paynes Grey now. Again, I'm just building up different directions. And at the moment it all probably looks very, very messy. We're a bit cooler up here, so I'm just going to block in now while I've got the Paynes Grey in my hand. Okay, and back to our sepia. Just going to soften some of the edges that don't need to be so obvious. I'm going to darken this area in here. We've got to patch this and blend this area in here as well, so we can get away with, there's a little patchy bit in here which is a bit darker, so very lightly just over the top, just to create where your shadows are. In fact, I think we might even be able to get away with a bit of a light coating. Yeah, let's go for it, a light coating. There we go. It probably could do with being a bit pinker, but at this stage I'm honestly not going to worry. I'd rather get the blending right. Okay, so at the moment there's no clear definition between the dark and the light here, so that's all we need to do next, is to get that transition. So what we're going to do now is we're going to come in a little bit with the dark indigo, not too much. If we do too much, then we're going to start going too cold, but as long as we've got that nice warm base underneath and we don't go over the top, it should be enough to just get the transition defined between the lighter and the darker of the two. We will go in again with the other colours as well. If you find your rivets start to fill up, your divots, not rivets, just get your eraser, clean over the top. The only thing with the indentation, and as I say, my photo isn't particularly clear, is they do make them look a lot clearer sometimes than they are in the photo, which isn't always a problem. It certainly doesn't bother me. There we go. Okay, and the Paynes Grey again. I'm going to colour this tip in because I'm not overly keen on it being, so there we go, there we go. I've just use your warm grey if you're not happy with yours, just to go in and soften that out a bit. Like so. And then we can start doing a bit of solid colouring in here. We've got a nice subtle whisker here, which I'm really happy with. We're just going to layer now between the Paynes Grey and the dark sepia, one after the other, just layering like a sandwich. And you should get a real rich, deep colour. And we're going to do that all the way around. You can have a little bit of shade up here and a little bit of fur strokes up here until we get to the second set of whiskers, because it's not as solid up here. So again, between the two, just add those fur strokes in like that. Then what you can do is you can gently, with your dark sepia, shade over the top, and you still get the effect of the fur. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to get, let's go with our cold grey 4, and we're just going to take the starkness out of this join where the whiskers meet. So at the very bottom, just a bit of pressure and just flatten the bottom of where the whiskers eyebrows start. You see you've got much more natural transition. They look a lot more natural now, don't they? In fact, I'm going to colour mine in with the warm grey, because if you look at the reference picture, there's actually a tinge to them. They're not white. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give them a bit more of a natural colour like so. Okay, now I think we can go a little bit more solid in here. There we go, there we go. Okay, so the next part we're going to do is this middle section. For me, I'm going to stop recording now, but obviously I'll see you in a minute. I think we're up to nearly an hour, so I'm going to probably make the tutorial 2 hours long, see how far we go. So it may be over 2 sections this month. But that's where I'm going to stop recording now, and then we shall continue with the dark section, which will be quite a fair whack of solid colouring. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it for now. Let's get it at a decent angle where you can see where we are at. Let me move the camera. Okay, so that's where we are so far. I think we could probably do with a little bit more blending in there, and I am quite tempted. I am actually. Let's have a look. That's not pink enough. Let's go with, I don't know, let's just, I'm just testing a theory here first. No, that's not strong enough. Let's go with, where are you? Sorry guys. Okay, here we go, here we go. Okay, let's try. Yep, add Caput Mortum Violet. No, Caput Mortum, sorry, to your list. Caput Mortum, let me write that down. It will be on your list anyway at the beginning of the tutorial. And I'm going to just go over the whole lot there. And that just gives us our pinkier tone. I think it's probably missing. And I'm going to come down this way too. I'm going to go over the edge as well because I'll be trimming mine, as I've mentioned 50 times already. There we go, that just warms it up. So that's where we are so far. So I'll see you again for the middle section. There you go. There we go. Okay, I'll see you again soon. Hey guys, so we're back again, although it's seamless for you. We're just going to get our blades, and if you've done previous tutorials with me before, you're familiar with this technique. Now you will know if you've got enough layers down, because you won't damage the paper. If you find you're damaging the paper, it means that you haven't layered enough with your pencils. So we're just going, it doesn't need much, but we're just going to pull out a few more highlights here and there. I just want some deeper highlights showing, that's all. So we're not going to do many, but I do want just some deeper ones. Now I'm not plunging my blade in, I've tilted it so I'm picking up the edge rather than the tip, and I'm just, as I say, pulling out a little bit extra just to give me a bit more depth where needed. You don't have to be concise as to where you decide to put these, but especially in here it needed just a little bit of extra punch on those highlights. You may see my phone sneak into view. Okay, so we're just going to put a few littler ones in here. Again, just to strengthen them a bit. Like so. Okay, so that's pretty much all you need to do on that little bit there. So we're just going to start building up this inner section here. We do have in the middle, it's a lot bluer, and down here it's a bit lighter. So what I'm quite tempted to do is, certainly in this particular area, because of the level of blue that you can see, let's have a look at, I'm just going to try the colour first before I mention which it is. Yeah, I think that will work quite well. So the one that we used is Helioblue-reddish. I've never understood the reddish. So Helioblue-reddish. Then I have gone over the top just to blend where the dark goes into that blue with the dark indigo. And that helps just give you that extra blue tinge that you've got in there. So I'm just going to turn the fan off because it's probably a bit irritating for you guys. So we're going to work on this. Let's move my reference photo as well so I can see what I'm doing. There we go. The colour's a little bit off today. You may have noticed it through the screen. It actually looks a bit green here and it's not, so I don't quite know why it's misbehaving. So we're just going to shade in gently where we need our blue. You may hear some strange noises in the background. I've got my coffee man's home with a very sick little one as well, so he said that he would sit with her while I come and get some more of this done. And I think we can bring this up because the shape here comes in a little bit. It's not deadly down, so just going to bring that through. Okay, so it is a case now of building up, and she is quite cold in here, so we're going to go straight in with the dark indigo, and I'm pretty much going to block the entire area. I think we're going to bring, there's almost like a V shape which is a bit lighter. Notice I'm not being neat and tidy at the top because I'm going to be trimming mine. Let's head down a bit more. Okay, she's got a little notchy bit there as well, so I'm going to carry on filling. Just tilted my pencil slightly. It's not this way, it's this way, sideways. Please forgive my nail polish. I will sort it out for the next one, I promise. So we're just filling that space in at the moment. I'm not being particularly tidy at the moment. We're just going to go in the opposite direction. I am going up and down this time. I've got no worry about, because I'm doing it in such light layers, you're barely going to see any up and down motion apart from here where it's starting to cross over. So again, opposite direction. And this sort of motion just helps fill in without you having this direct sort of indication of where you've been. Okay. So we've now pretty much, so the eyebrow's there, so we know from the eyebrow that we've got this arc shape here, which you always get above cat's eyes no matter what colour they are. You always have it. And then we're going to come all the way up. So we've got 1, 2, I've missed an eyebrow there, so I can add that in, and then we come across slightly, so it's about here, I think. So we're just going to block all this in. I think we need to be bringing this blue out further. Going to keep going like that. So we're going to spread that blue out. I think it needs to come further because she's quite equal. On her colouring. This is quite monotonous, this bit. Okay, now we're going to swap to our Paynes Grey. Apologies if you can hear the dogs next door. Okay, I'm going the opposite direction. We'll blend all this through in a minute. Okay, so we've got about 4 coats building up this shadow. So now we want to start bringing it in and making it a bit darker. So we're going to go in with the dark indigo again. Now this time I need you to just apply a little bit more pressure. Switch to ovals if you can. And we're going to swap to the dark sepia next. Now if you're anything like me, this large area covering can be quite a drain on the hand and the arm. So just stretch it out a little bit, because there's absolutely no point in hurting yourself to the point where you can't okay. So we're going to swap to the dark sepia. And again, we're going to apply a little bit more pressure. I'm going to switch it round slightly. What we want to do at this stage is, when we apply the bit of pressure, is try and go in the direction that the fur will be. So we start in this direction towards 11 o'clock, and then we work our way up to 12 o'clock, 11 o'clock, to 12 o'clock. And the reason we're doing this in sections is because it's bad enough on our hands and arms at this stage. If we do any larger sections than this, our arms will want to drop off and we will want to give up. It's important to have this many layers, because if you don't, you just simply don't get the depth of fur that you're going to want to achieve. Just going over the edge here, so when I come to trim, okay. Now, this bit here, cat's furs on noses, if you've done a few already, you're aware, are going about 50 billion different directions. So we're just going to put in some fur strokes first of all that go in this direction. Then what you do is you go from 3 o'clock to 2 o'clock to 1 o'clock to 12 o'clock, 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock, 11, 12. Then when you come to this bit, we go from 3, 4, 5, and you don't go to 6. You only go to 5. And then our fur hair here becomes very short, but we'll build that up as we go. So we're going to come back to this area and we're going to go back to our dark indigo. We're going to go from 11 to 12, 11 to 12, applying more pressure, 11 to 12. To 12, and we're going to go with one more solid layer. And we are going to hopefully bring it all together with the Paynes Grey. So 11 to 12. Again, more pressure. You can probably hear on the recording how much pressure I end up applying when I come to these stages. Okay, so we're getting a bit more of a solid colour now. So we're going to sharpen our Paynes Grey. And now we're going to start in this area here, and we're going to go from 11 o'clock, up and down motion. And I'm not being neat at all, I'm just up and down, 11 to 12. 11 to 12, that's all I'm doing. But this quick rapid up and down just adds a little bit of additional texture. We can head towards the 7 o'clock down this way. Okay, I'm just going to sweep out a little bit here just to make that blend a bit more even. Let's sharpen the dark sepia. And we're going to solidly colour over this shadow area that she has here, because that is quite solid. Little circular movements, fills out all those gaps. Now at this stage, this is where we can start going from. So this is our 7 o'clock. Smaller strokes, we head down to 6, whoops, across to 5, up to 3 here. So work in small sections as we come up. It may not look like we're doing an awful lot, but from a distance, not only are we filling in the colour, we are adding more dimension again with regards to the first strokes. So when you get to here, which we were pointing up to, sort of the 1 o'clock, that's what we want to do, is we want to start aiming to twist our direction up to 1 o'clock and 12 o'clock. So 1 o'clock will be this inner edge, 12 o'clock is this edge, and then we come out to 11 o'clock on this edge. Apologies for all the amount of o'clocks, but it's the easiest way to explain in which direction I'm going. You don't want your strokes very long, but you don't want them too short either, because we're quite zoomed in on the cat. So you can see instantly the difference that's made. So we're going to be switching between the dark indigo and the Paynes Grey, and because we want to keep this a bit lighter rather than keep going over and over, we're going to aim for our 3 o'clock, our 1 o'clock up to our 12. So in the middle, very middle, we're 12. In fact, I'm just going to go all the way down. I'm not being precise, as you can see, I'm just getting them down. Then what you can do is you can come back up and then get those 1 o'clocks in. And then here, when we come to here, it sort of meets, so it sort of curves up and meets. I'm just going to sharpen my pencil. So when we come here, we then go to our 12 and then we go back out. And we get this meet in the middle then. Like so. It will look much neater once we get all the layers on, but it's just a good way of showing you the direction. going to keep going. And so down here we need to keep them much shorter because we're nearing the nose, and when we get to the nose the hair is always much shorter, but the transition in the position is no different. We're still getting that meat in the middle going on. Now once you've done it like this a few times, you'll be doing it so quickly you won't even register that you've got the hang of it really quickly. I've got a solid shadow area here, so I'm just going to put that in now. We have one that tips out just here, meets up with this one, and then up again. Like so. Okay, so now we go to our Paynes Grey, and in fact I think we might even get away with simple layering over the top. Don't go too heavy because we want to see your dark indigo pencil marks that you've got underneath. Just keep it light. Keep the direction roughly in the order that your hair is going. And what we can do is we can apply a bit of pressure and just blend out these edges. There's not a huge amount of colour difference between the centre, so we've got to get it down so it matches more. So let's go with dark sepia now. If you want to, you can have it a touch lighter. But you know me by now. If I can get it as close to the photo as I possibly can, I will. See, that much more natural now. She used to be so lightly coloured on her head. She's darkened up so much. Her whole body has actually. She was very much caramel colour. I think it's they don't reach their actual colouring until they're 2 years old, and then they're not supposed to change, but she has. She's continued to get darker. So the camera probably doesn't pick up the detail that you can still see underneath, but you'll see while you're working on yours that you can still see those details. So I'm now going to go in with the Helio. And just apply a few strokes of the Helio in here. And if you're worried that it's going too dark, just simply get a cold grey, one of the lighter cold greys, and just go over the top. But you're not going to know until you've got that whole area filled in, so please don't panic yet. So I'm just going in with the sepia, dark sepia again. You know that this area in here is quite solid. It goes all the way up to this area being quite solid. I mean, once you know where your major solid areas are, you haven't got to worry so much, because we know how easy it was to render up these more solid areas. So we're just going to keep going and building up. Personally, for me, I'm going to keep doing it now with the pencil stroke method, rather than filling it up with solid colour. And that in the long run will help me keep the areas light that I need to. I'm going in with the Helio. Paynes Grey. No, Paynes Grey it's not. Sorry, it's dark sepia. Paynes Grey. Apologies for the noise. Sounds like the neighbours out there dealing with it. Okay, so so far I'm quite happy. The only thing actually is I think I probably want to come over this way a little bit more, looking at the there we go. She just comes over this way a touch more. So I'm just going in with the cold grey 1 and just toning that out a bit. There we go. As I say, you're not going to notice these things really until you start building these areas up. So that works really well. Actually, I'm quite pleased with. I'm going to go over and just use this cold grey 1. Cold grey 1. Just to blend this centre highlight area a bit. Now I can carry on with my Paynes Grey. She is pretty dark all the way up here. Just keep cross hatching the, our 12 to 3 and our 12 to 9, just to get that crossed over hair look that they have on their nose. And again with solid colour in here. See how really natural it's starting to look now. So the only thing here is I want to blend this bit a bit more. So rather than going in individual pencil strokes, I'm literally going to colour over and try and just blend this line a touch more than what it is already. So I'm still with the Paynes Grey. Now I'm going to go in with the dark indigo. If you find it's hard to blend that, it may be that your colour transition just needs altering. So, we know that this side's got all 3 colours in, so this side has to have most of those as you blend out. Okay, so I'm going to use my Paynes Grey, and we're just going to solidify over here a bit more. And I've always said about drawing in context, so if you find that you're struggling with the way that this looks, ignore this and go straight to the other side and get that filled out. So I know that she's very heavy in shadow all the way up now, from here all the way up. Just going in the direction that the fur will be sitting. just going to go up to where those eyebrows are, because the eyebrows sit quite heavy in shadow, this particular one does. Right, that's where the shadow lies on that eye, so I'm just going to pop that in. Hopefully we're looking somewhere roughly where I am now, and I am hoping that you're happy with your results so far. Just trying to take a step back at the minute, and that's what you want to do, so don't forget stepping back makes a big difference sometimes when you're working on these projects. So just have a sit back, have a lean back. I think so far I am pretty happy with how it's turning out. I think she looks beautiful and silky in this middle section here. So I think it's just a case of getting this area here darkened up. So that's what we'll be doing next, and then again we can come back and we can work on that other area. So this highlight here I'm probably going to add in with the light grey, I think. Maybe just keep a section there to remind me. This is some of the reason why I chose this particular picture, because the other pictures that I have of her, although they do show some solid colour, this had a real good amount of solid colour. So I wanted to teach you guys that it's okay to have solid colour. I think too many people are scared to have a solid black, a solid white, a solid pink, purple, whatever it may be. But actually, I'm using the Paynes Grey still, by the way. It's not always a bad thing, because there are going to be areas that have no definition, and it's these areas that then make the definition stand out even more. And I think that gets forgotten about quite a lot when it comes to drawing photorealism. Everyone is in the zone and they want to get to the point where they think, well, not where they think, but they want to get every single part of the detail in. But actually with realism there are areas where there is no detail, and that's what you need to include as well. And I think that's especially true for animals, because we always want to show every single hair, and that's not the case. When we draw objects, I think we limit ourselves to drawing exactly what we see, which is how it should be. When we come to do animals and hair on a human head, we get into this compulsion to have to draw every single hair, and that's not how it goes. You can't see every single hair, you do see solid blocks of colour. So that's worth remember going forward. So I'm just going to swap to the Paynes, the dark sepia. See how much more natural that's looking now we're coming and doing the other side. So just going to keep filling. And what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to stop at this stage here when it comes to the fur. Let's just get the, actually let's get the dark indigo. Let's get that on there. And then we're going to work on the other eye. Because again, it's easier to work in context. So if the eye is in there, we get a good gauge of whether it's dark enough or light enough against the brightness of the blue in the eye. I'm going to just go over the whole lot with the indigo, just to tone that down a little bit, get it looking even more natural. Massive difference already. There is a lot of this going back and forth when it comes to doing portraits, and you'll find that you'll get into little habits of your own. Going to keep building up the layer here. See how natural that looks, that solid colour. It doesn't look odd. It doesn't look bulky. It looks very natural. It's just, it can be a little bit arduous if you are doing larger portraits and you're having to do quite a large mass of colour. This is where things like the pan pastels can come in handy, because they can block some of those areas for you and take some of the work out of it. But sometimes where's the fun in that? There's a bit of a satisfaction that you can get from achieving some really rich colours by not having to actually use black or undercoating. But again, it's down to personal preference. You'll eventually learn methods and get into habits that work really well for you. Okay, there's a little bit of definition in here with direction of first strokes, but not much. Okay, I'm just going to swap to dark sepia. Again, I'm just working on getting those shadow areas down. filling it in. Just getting that transition as natural looking as possible. Right, it's probably going to be the last layer we need to get down. Now if you noticed, I haven't gone in and worried about doing all these pencil strokes, and again that's because it's probably something I'm going to do after we've done the eye. And in effect actually the paper seems to be almost working for me. I've just realised this side could really do with being a bit more solid. Just adding a bit of pressure there. There we go. Okay, so we're going to come back to this later on, so we need to concentrate again on the eyes. So the three main colours we used was the Pthtalo Blue, the Paynes Grey, we used the Warm Grey 3, and I used the Bluish Pale. I don't know why I haven't got, because we used the light Pthtalo Blue as well, didn't we? I haven't written it down, naughty me. Okay, so my methods may change this time round. I have a habit of doing things differently each time I move on to a section. So you're not going crazy if I'm doing it differently. I just go with what works. So I'm just going to pencil in the pupil as we did before. Just zooming into my reference. We've got, I've lost a lot of my lines where I haven't covered my paper, which is very naughty. Okay, so we have our veiny bit here. Like so. Okay, so Pthtalo Blue. Side of her eyes actually quite dark. I think this side she was more in shadow. She was sitting on the patio when we took this, so I know that she was this is the side that the wall, the side of the house was on. Okay, so we've got a bulk bit of shadow in there. Let's use it with the phthalo actually. Nothing around like so. Okay, I'm just going to use the gently the light phthalo all over. Again in the direction, so if you imagine the hands of a clock, we're going around the clock. Just putting a bit of pressure when we go over to this shadow area, just to help blend it, because we want those eyes really smooth. Okay, a little bit of Paynes Grey in here because it's like a cloud by the looks of it. We've got a little bit in here. I'll refine and darken that pupil shape a bit. You don't have to get the shadows in the eye exact. It won't be the end of the world. Pthtalo. These ovals I'm going in, I'm not going in circles, probably looks it, but okay, Paynes Grey. Gently, not a lot of pressure. Remember to blend the edges of the iris out. You can go in with your black now if you want. And we use the Paynes Grey again just to again soften down the edges, like so. Right, I think we need to come out a little bit more. There we go. Her eye is quite a bit darker on this side. I'm probably not going to, I don't want them to be too unevenly matched. And draw the rest of the eye in so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, Paynes Grey, just greying off the edge there. She's got quite a large darker area on the inner part which she doesn't really have on that side. So lightest blue that you have in your kit. or the coldest, you know, like cold grey 1, something like that, if you don't have it. I'm just blending that bottom bit out, blend over the whole lot, get it nice and smooth. There we go. Now, like the other side, she's much darker underneath this zone here. So that was the Pthtalo, Paynes Grey, Pthtalo Light, just to blend it. Might even touch a bit of blending with the lightest blue, and then we just need to darken the veiny area a bit. Okay, so the Pthtalo Light, I'm just using an up and down motion and just every now and then popping a bit of extra pressure on, just to help give us those beautiful little lines that you can see in her eye. And we can blend out into the sky here because it's not perfectly white. And then with that, you want to get your lightest blue or your lightest grey and just blend, get that really smooth. She's got a tiny pale a bit here. It's not true white, but I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to leave it as it is. We just need to darken this cloud in here. There we go. We've got a couple of darkish zones. Very much like swimming pool eyes. I'm just using the Paynes Grey and I'm just popping in a few bits of detail here and there, not much, but she is quite grey. As I said, I don't want to put too much in because I don't want her to be too much different. So I'm now going to go in with the medium Pthtalo and I'm just going to blend over that. I'm not going to fuss about detail, I'm just blending. Don't blend into your lightest area too much, just blend over what you've done. Then you can add in details afterwards once you've done that. So like now, for example, I might just add, just got some darker bits down here. Now I'm going to go in with the Paynes Grey and just add even more little bits of detail. It's all these tiny bits of detail that you add which will set you apart from the people that don't necessarily do realism to this level. So these are the bits that you want to keep adding in. Just little flicks here and there, just little dots, little lines. And the Pthtalo, blend that cloud out. Again, even on the dark areas, you can still go in with your Pthtalo and add all these extra bits of detail. Just apply extra pressure and it will get more colour lay down for you. I'm going to blend with the light phthalo over the top, soften all those lines. I'm not going into my lightest areas though, and keeping those light. There we go. So let's come out of our reference. So I think we've got a good, I'm pretty happy. I could have gone in and brought more colours in the blue, but I wanted to simplify it. I need to grey this a bit more, I think. So I'm just going to go over very lightly with the Paynes Grey. And I think we can even lighten up over here even more. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to bring in my white at this stage. Doesn't matter whether you use your luminance. That's not white, that's white. Or your, well, it doesn't matter what white you use, just as long as you have some white. And I'm just going to add some really soft light areas to where the lightest needs to be. There's not many actually on this eye, but I just want to add a few, so I'm happy. A couple down here, but not many. There we go. I think I'm a couple in the darker areas. Again, not many. As I say, it's really, this right eye is particularly like a swimming pool. But I think we're going to leave it like that because I think it probably looks the most natural as it is. So that is your second eye done. Let's just grab a picture of that for you guys. So when you zoom out on your, say you take a photo, and I do encourage taking photos because it can really help you look through the camera at essentially what it would look like as a person looking at it new, and it can also help you define where you need to go light and where you need to go dark. Okay, so for example, not that you can barely see it actually, go a little bit darker on that sticky up bit there. There we go. Okay. Right, I'm going to stop recording at this moment. The next one you get from me, obviously, will just continue on. Hey guys, so we're going to work on getting the last bit done. It's following on for you, but for me it's another day. And look, sorted the nails out. So, hopefully we're going to get the last bit done. I'm keeping my fingers crossed because my little one's still at home sick, but Coffee Man's home at the moment, so they're watching a movie in the sitting room, hopefully keeping her occupied for me. So fingers crossed. So we're going to continue on with the right side, which is a lot darker than the left side. So we haven't got as much of this information to put in. So fingers crossed, we should get it done, hopefully, in this last session. Apologies, that was little, and we can't pause our videos when we're recording, which is really frustrating. Okay, so we've got our lino here underneath, as we've done before. Let's just try and turn the angle a bit more for you. There we go. So behind, I've got the lino that we did earlier on, and find the smallest end, which I think is this end, and we're going to get these eyebrows in. We've got quite a thick one in the middle here, and then these are quite fine. Now I do have somewhere in my arsenal an even tinier end, but I can't think where it is, which is no help to anybody really. So we'll do what we've done here basically and almost disguise it. So we've got one next to it this side. I won't be too heavy. And then we've got one this side, which I forgot to draw in, so it might not be there on your line work. Okay, so we're going to go through the cycle again of undercoating with our warms and our colds. So up here she's quite warm, down here until you get to this corner she's quite cold. So I'm just going to tilt my pencil, so we're working on the side, and again I'm not fussing about how neat it is over the edges because I'll be trimming it. All I'm doing is blocking in where I can see the warm. Now the reference is going to look different depending on your screen, so you may be looking at this video going, what the heck is she doing? It's not warm at all, and that is perfectly fine. If it doesn't look warm on your screen, then you don't have to, you can just carry on going in with the cold. So you know, I won't be offended if yours does not look exactly like mine, because I am aware that each device, each phone, each computer, whatever you're using, even printout, it's all going to vary slightly. Now I wouldn't normally block out this much, but there's not massive amount of detail that you can actually see on this side of her face, so I'm not overly worried about blocking the whole lot out. Now unlike this side where she's got a little bit of a pale patch, she hasn't got one this side. So we're just going to fill the whole lot in. Like so. At the moment I'm not fussing about direction. You can feel free, but I'm doing such a light layer it's not going to be that noticeable. But I'm just going to do the inner eye, which has got quite a bit of blue in there, so I'm going to go in with the light phthalo. I'm then going hit it with, let's pop a bit of Caput Mortum in there, just where the darkest sections are. And then we're going to go in with our dark sepia. And then I'm going to go in with, I think we've got warm grey 3, I think it is. The numbers have disappeared, so I'm pretty sure it's 3. We're going to blend over the blue area because she's only got a tiny bit of a highlight in here. So we're just going to blend over the whole lot, keep that little bit of highlight in there, and we know that we've got to go darker now, so let's grab that blue again. We're going to bring some of that blue colour back. Let's just, I don't think it's going to make much of a difference now. Okay, so I think I can afford to actually bring in the Pthtalo. Just darken around that highlight. Like so. So that was the Pthtalo. We are going to grab our Nougat and we're going to darken a little bit more up here. And then we're going to go in with the Paynes Grey. I need to sharpen mine. Okay, and we're just going to go in. And we need to pick out, like up here where it blends in the shadow a bit more. I'll bring that round. And then underneath. I'm just going to soften a little bit this edge here. And looking at this side to my reference picture, I think we need to go darker on this line. I don't think it's prominent enough. There we go, that's already quite a big difference. And I even think we could darken that line too. There we go. I'm going to bring in the Pthtalo. I just want it to be a touch more brighter on the blue down here. There we go, I'm happy with that now. See, this is generally what you're going to be doing the more and more you get into doing portraits, is you're just going to keep coming back and you're going to keep going over, and yeah, it's just part of it really. I'm quite happy with how the inner part looks here. I'm going to take my lightest cold grey, which is 1, I'm just going to blend over a little bit here just to extend that highlight down. It's not a highlight as such, but it is lighter. I'm just Paynes Grey, I'm just reducing that highlight. There we go. Okay. So let's have a look. I think just gauging. I'm going to Paynes Grey, and then we're going to work in the direction. Now I am going back and forth, but I've got a slight tilt on my pencil, which means I'm working, you can't really see that, I'm not working on the tip, it's starting to flatten, so I'm working on a flat side, which makes the blending a little bit more easier. And we're just going to keep going in the direction of the fur. Now this is where I will look at thinning these right down. I'm just going over the top, and whatever goes in and what doesn't. So I'm not overly fussed, but it takes away. There we go, look at how beautiful and fine that is. We want to do that again on this one. As I say, I have got a finer indenting tool, which again I got from a nail kit. I got it from the paintbrush set actually, and it's a really fine end. You do have to be careful with it though, because you can damage your paper with it, but it works really well for really fine, and I can't find it, so I don't know where that's gone. So we're just going to keep thinning that out. So I am literally just going over the top, and I'm just going to, because I made this one larger. There we go, I'm happy with that. Okay, so we're going to keep going over the top. Now we know that that's how dark we need to go anyway. So I'm just going to come in now with my dark sepia, and I'm going to start with the fur motion. So we want to be going up to the 12 o'clock position here. We're sort of turning around to the 1 o'clock. 1 to 2. And then we want to be heading for the 2 o'clock, around to 3 o'clock. I'm going to swap to the Paynes Grey. I'm liking this 1, 2, 3, 4 o'clock. I'm hoping that you'll find it easy to understand in which direction I am going. There we go, okay. So I'm still in with the Paynes Grey at the moment. I want to be heading up into this corner, so again up to the sort of 1 o'clock zone. Now I'm just going to grab my dark sepia, because up at this part she's much darker, so I'm going to block that in. And then we need to block until I think it's here. If you look at where the whisker, where the eyebrow, it curves here where we've got that dark. So we really need to be consistent and solid in here. So I'm going to go between the Paynes Grey and the dark sepia. So I've just done the dark sepia, and now I'm going to go in with the Paynes Grey. Now my pressure has increased. Now you can see that nice dark definition. So when we come to block, in fact I'm going to grab my cold grey 4 and just to get some more layers down without adding too much colour. So we're filling space without adding colour. So we're almost sort of putting the highlight in first with the lighter of the grey. Okay, I'm happy with that. And what we can do is later on, when we come to refining, we're going to grab our lightest of the grey, and we're just going to pick out zones and just pick out some highlights. But she's so solid in this area of colour that you could layer upon layer upon layer, to be honest, and just get her really, really rich, but you'll end up getting the wax bloom. And as we tend to burnish, you run the risk of the bloom starting even sooner. So we're just going to keep coming out. Now this bit is much lighter here, so I've got the Paynes Grey. Again, we're working around our clock. Now under here, she's much darker. What I'm going to do is I'm going to work, and then we're going to close in the middle, because I find it easier. Otherwise, I do get a little bit bored of working on the same area, as I'm sure you probably do after a while. So again, she's pretty solid around her nose here. So I've still got the Paynes Grey. Medium pressure. Okay, and then I'm just gonna get that dark area in now, and I'm going in the direction that her fur is going. When we come up to here, she's actually very, very solid. You can't barely see. We need to bring our shape in. And that's what we do when we do realism. We don't look at it as cat fur, we look at it as shapes. You know, we look at eyes as shapes. We don't look at them. That's the best way to do it, is not look at them as a form. You know, I have to draw a pupil, I have to draw an eyelash. You don't, you draw shapes. So we've then got solid in here. Again, we have this shape happening here. Like so, and then we know then that we can just build up excuse me, our fur in between. So solid. Pretty much, there's been some damage done to my paper by the looks of it here. Okay, we need to get some solid in here. And let's fill that space again with the Paynes Grey. Now I am going to grab my dark indigo. She has a little dark patch in here. Let's sharpen that. Just get that in there. Got another one here. Almost follows on from her eye, actually. It looks a bit odd now, but it will be blended. And then we're going to very fine lines, follow her eye around. You can't see them that clearly, so we're not going to go heavy. And you could, if you want, if you wanted a high definition version, then you can absolutely. It's your picture at the end of the day. Right, I'm just going to have a sip of my coffee, bear with me. Okay. And we're going to bring in that solid under here again with our blue. So this is our dark indigo. Again, you know, I don't like to be sitting here being precise with every single hair because it will just drive you insane. I know I said that quite a lot in this video so far, but you'll see a lot of people say to me, I can't believe how quick you draw, but I need, for my own sanity, to take the pressure away. So if I can sit here and quite happily work this quickly, then that's fine with me, because it means that I can move on to the next project. I'm being loose with my style and I'm enjoying it, so you know, I'm not putting too much pressure on myself. Right, now I'm going to go now and just get in a load of fur like we did the other side. We're putting it underneath, so when we come to layer on top we get that depth, you know, because fur isn't one-dimensional. There isn't just one coat, there's several, so it's that depth that you need to portray. So by adding them in the first couple of layers, as you layer over the top, you get this real warmth and real depth and thickness to the fur. Like so. So we keep going. Fingers will probably start aching. Right, let's work our way all the way round. Let's just get those undercoats done, get those bits of fur underneath. Okay, so we carry on in our 3 o'clock direction, 2, 1, and then we're up to 1 and 12, mainly 1 up here, and then as we come around it comes round to 2 and then to 3. So it sort of starts where the edge of the eye is, that's when it starts to sort of come back around. Putting them in now also reminds you in which direction you're supposed to be going, which is always helpful. It's like a map. Okay, so that's our sort of first base layer of mess, one of the ugly stages as we call them. Okay. Now we can go in with the Paynes Grey, I think, and we've got a solid patch up here that comes around. As you see, I'm not doing first strokes, I am solid colouring in here. I think we can darken up here a little bit more. Go. Now I can go in again with the first strokes. If you turn it slightly, where you've been doing now, you've made that wedge, just use the tip of your wedge. Because there's quite a lot of solid colour, it is going to take us a while to build up, so the process is very much rinse and repeat. So if I don't repeat the actual process, I will repeat the pencil colours that we're using. Still with the Paynes Grey. Dark indigo. Just get some extra first strokes on top. Darken this section slightly. It all needs softening down a bit really. So I'm going to now swap over to my warm grey 4. Because it still gives us that highlight but without adding too much colour. This is where it's called the saturation burnishing. Lost a little bit of that dark area there, so just add that back in. I haven't purposely done it, but there's a tiny little highlight here which I'm leaving because I really like the look of it. So dark indigo again. I'm actually going to grab my black and go in there because she's very strong, and I might even strengthen this side. I'm starting to see things where it's all coming together much more now. Even where is it? Down here, there's a much more solid zone down here. There we go. Okay, so let's not get too distracted because we can tweak afterwards. I'm not too worried at this point about having a real sharp edge on this other coat, or other layer. because again it's so soft in the reference that it lends itself to giving us that much more realistic level. Just try and blend that transition in. We are much darker here. We're going the opposite direction to fill some of that paper tooth. And we're going to go up. We need to bring that shape back in. We've lost this shape here. Not worrying about my edges. Okay, now what we've got to do is we've got to get this transition and this blending nice and smooth. So at the moment it looks very rough. Again, I'm still going in the direction of the fur. I'm just taking the effort out of the work later by doing that backwards and forwards motion, which is giving us the effect of fur. So dark sepia. Blending over the entire thing. Oval, medium pressure. We're getting a much more natural colour transition. This is why at the early stages, middle stages, and even some of the later stages, you shouldn't, and I know it's easier to say than it is to do, but you shouldn't sit there panicking that your picture is not looking the way you want it to, because all it takes is one more layer, just one more layer, and bam, there it is. So patience is absolutely key with coloured pencil, and I think that's probably one of the reasons why I enjoy it the most, because there's not many things I am patient in life with, especially other crafts. You know, you have to wait for things to dry, you have to wait for things to set. You get a real gratification when drawing in pencil, because every time your pencil hits that paper you're making a mark and you're seeing a progression in front of your eyes. Yes, it may take 5, 6, 24 hours. You're still seeing something every time you make a mark on that piece of paper. There we go. We're just building and building and building. As I say, this bit is quite monotonous. We're building a solid colour, but we're having to build a solid colour with texture, and it takes time. But we're getting there, and we're getting there already. So what I want to do is I'm just going to grab my cold grey one and get some lengthier hairs in there. I know it looks very stupid at this stage. Just building the length of the first strokes up, only because they look much shorter than this side. Okay, now we're going to go in with our dark indigo, nice sharp pencil. Sip of coffee, sorry guys. And then, do you know what, I might even tilt my paper slightly make life a bit easier, I'm going to tilt my paper and we're going to draw in some longer there we go. And while we're here, we're going to make this more solid with the same colour, because our pencil is a bit sharper, it's going into the tooth a bit more, which is absolutely fine. I'm just going to bring back the shape of the shadow, so we don't really want to lose that. Just come up into the paler section a bit, and that helps that transition become a bit more natural. Okay, I'm going to warm up this section here by adding dark sepia. Just blend that in a bit. There we go. Let's just add a couple of warm strokes in there. Okay, so we just need to tidy up this bit down here. I think we can afford to, I think I'm going to get the cold grey and we're going to just blend over a little bit, just to knock back a little bit of the lightest. So this is a cold grey 4. There we go. Okay, let's fill this space in, so when we come to trim it will be nice and neat all the way down to the bottom. Dark sepia. Paynes Grey. There we go. Okay, so we've just got to continue working on our little area up here, making these eyebrows look a bit more natural. So I've still got the Paynes Grey in my hand. Just going to reduce them down a tiny touch more. There we go. We've got to blend these edges. So remember about pushing your pencil just on the edge to flatten it down a little bit, and then it doesn't look quite so unnatural. Okay, that's solid colour. All the way around. I'm not worrying about this bit until I've done this side area, and then I know how dark I need to go. I really would love to see more sharing of the art that you do. If you're on Instagram, I'm more than happy to share your work once you've done it. So tag me in it, Bonnita Doodles. Just tag me in what you've done with regards to the Patreon videos. I'm happy to give you a shout out on normal drawings as well. So, you know, do tag me. If you hashtag Bonnita Doodles as well, then it will be in my hashtag section. But yeah, don't be afraid to post them. You know, I'd love to see more of what you're doing. We have our regular posters, absolutely, but it'd be lovely to see some of the newer ones. You know, and I'd love to share your your work that you've been doing. So yeah, please come find me on the Instagram. It's easier to do it on the Instagram than it is Facebook. So yeah, come find me. Right, now I'm going to build it up. Now, it's not again as wiry as it is here, but I want it to be a little bit more evenly matched. So I'm not going to push it too deep in colour. Okay, I'm going to swap to the Paynes Grey and I'm going to sharpen the pencil. Quick sip of coffee. Just going to push the end of this a bit more in, shade that bottom. There we go. It's not quite as curvy as the one that she's got, but no one knows, so it doesn't matter. Right, just multi-directional. I'm going to fill this space in. The reason I've sharpened it is to get it into the tooth. Flat is fine, but you don't get that. It doesn't quite get pushed into the tooth as well as it does with sharp. If you think about when you hoover a carpet, you go over the carpet, don't you? You don't want to go over the carpet when you're trying to fill it. You want to go down into the grooves. There we go. She is almost done. I'm going to get my cold grey 3, warm grey 3, sorry, and just blend a little bit over this. There we go, just makes me feel a bit better. Okay, Paynes Grey. And then we just need to concentrate now on getting the last part of the eye. Now you can go, I'm going to go with a tiny bit of black under here and in here. Don't push too heavy if you go in with your black, because it won't look right. Paynes Grey. There we go. And I'm going to go in with the dark indigo. Can you see how much more natural she's looking? So dark indigo still. Let's just fill the last bit of the heavier fur. Right, I'm going to bring in the dark sepia. Very, very last thing I'm going to do is actually bring in a bit of Nougat. Okay, I'm going to bring a bit of Nougat up in here. There we go. And that just helps with that colour. I can bring a touch down here actually, not much. And I do believe that we are done, and I'm hoping, whoops, thing won't go very straight. That's the straightest I can get it. Now we're going to start comparing. I want to darken this bit in here a little bit more. So we're just going to do the final tweak. So I want to darken that pupil. That's much better already. Now there is a size difference because where the photo was taken, the sun was shining in this direction and she was sat near a wall on this direction, so hence why there is so much shadow. Now I'm just going to bring the Paynes Grey in and just blend in a bit of shadow on this side here. Like so. And we're just going to bring the Paynes Grey out slightly. So it's all these little bits of tweaking. I'm doing a very rough motion on her eyes with this grey because it adds a little bit of texture in there as well. That eye is come out really, really well. I'm so pleased. I'm just going to bring the Paynes Grey down into this section a little bit more. And I'm going to grab my light phthalo and I just want to add a bit more punch into this area, a bit more detail. I don't want her to be so flat on that eye. Normal phthalo. Go. I'm being very wiggly with my pencil and I am going all over the place, and that gives me lines, it gives me zones, it gives me little patches, and it all goes towards that texture in the eye that I want to achieve. Now I'm going to grab my cold grey 4 and head into here. There we go. I'm going to add some warm grey, I keep saying warm grey, cold grey 4 in here. These little 3 dots in here just need, that's better. And I think we are there. Well done everybody. I really hope you enjoyed this one. If you're up for some more eye studies, let me know, because I'm willing to do as many as you want. They're quite enjoyable, they're easy to get through. We can do human eyes, we can do human lips. I think we're going to work on doing more single studies rather than whole animals, because of the length of time it takes, and you get to enjoy the process a bit more, I think. But let me know what you guys think, and yeah, have fun.